So if the first person on the street puts out a bin that's the wrong one for the week, I guarantee you most of the street is going to put out the wrong bin because we're all just copying each other. Today, we are talking about problems. I've got them, you've got them, we've all got them, but I've made a list of some 9 very British problems that I've experienced since moving to the UK. Now, there is a website called Very British Problems, and oftentimes people will react to ones they find on there, but these are all mine. These are all based on my actual experience, so let's see how many you can relate to. Problem number 1, you can never remember which bin goes out this week. Is it recycling? Is it trash/rubbish? Never entirely sure. I can remember what I did 3 weeks ago on a Thursday, but I can never remember which bin goes out, which is not the entirety of the British problem. The British problem is that I'm relying on my neighbors to decide which bin I'm also putting out, but they don't always know because they're also relying on the first person they see to put a bin out. So if the first person on the street puts out a bin that's the wrong one for the week, I guarantee you most of the street is going to put out the wrong bin because we're all just copying each other. And I know there's a schedule online for every council. You can figure it out. I could post this on my fridge. I could put this in my phone. I could write it down on a post-it, but I don't. I literally just rely on looking out the window going, oh, I wonder which bin is going out today, and hoping that my neighbor has the right idea. Problem 2, Christmas chocolate, specifically Quality Street chocolate. I'm sorry. Here's the problem. I feel like around Christmas, there's these traditional British chocolate tins that everybody considers festive, and that's what we eat around the holidays. However, you go through the tin and I'm like, I don't actually like any of these chocolates. I just want something. I just want a normal chocolate. I don't want this just because it's Christmas. And I find for me, this also applies to other specialty chocolates. I just feel around holidays like Easter and Christmas, you're expected to have some sort of special chocolate, and I just want a good old-fashioned bar of plain milk chocolate Cadbury's for all the holidays. I don't want whatever is in the Quality Street tin. Problem number 3, and I hope my neighbors aren't watching this, when you leave the house at the exact same time as your neighbor, and British houses are typically relatively close together in a lot of spaces, so you're kind of confronted with that awkward moment of now we have to have some sort of social interaction because we both need to leave at the exact same time. And whether you're walking to your car or you're just walking somewhere, it's you can't ignore them because they're right next door. They're 6 feet away from you, but you also don't necessarily always feel like having a social interaction. And my neighbors are actually lovely if they are watching this. This is nothing against my neighbors, but you don't always want to chat. Sometimes you just want to get on with your life. But when you leave the house and your neighbor opens the door at the same time, it's often too late to retract you going out. Sometimes it's not too late. Sometimes you can pretend that you were just opening the door to get some fresh air for 2 seconds, and then you slam the door shut and wait for them to go to their car or whatever. But sometimes it's just you've reached the point of no return and you have to have some sort of a social interaction with your neighbor that feels very forced, and it's a British problem. Problem number 4 is the period of the year when the towels do not dry because the heating is not coming on, but it's not hot enough for the towels to necessarily dry on their own. So we're talking autumn and spring during certain months. Our heated towel rails are attached to the central heating, so if the central heating hasn't come on, then they're not going to come on. I know you can get other options and you can be able to turn on a towel rail specifically, but we're not that fancy. So for everyone else who isn't that fancy, you'll know what I mean when I say you reach just that really in-between soggy part of the year where the heating is not drying your towels, but it's not dry enough to dry them on your own, and you're just constantly trying to dry yourself with soggy towels. The next problem, and again, sometimes I like to read exactly what I wrote down because it's kind of ridiculous. The problem. When you're oh, I want to experience what the UK has to offer on holiday, but then it's £700 for one night in a glamping hut in the middle of nowhere versus £70 total to go to Spain with all-inclusive for 7 nights. So guess which one I'm choosing. This is a very British problem. It can be very expensive to travel within the UK, and you look at TUI or all of these other like package holiday deals, and you're like, should I go on a potentially mild weather, rainy holiday that cost me the same amount for 2 nights as it would cost me for a guaranteed sun holiday for 7 nights with all food included, and you typically just end up leaving. Like, I love the UK, but why is it cheaper to go on vacation 3 hours away, like across a body of water, than it is like 2 hours away that I could drive to? My next very British problem is I feel like the size of cars here have grown more than the size of the parking spaces. I will admit, I'm American. I'm not great at parking on a good day. However, there are some spaces where you're just like, you could only fit like a ride-on electric car for a 3-year-old in this spot, not an actual car that somebody drives. Now, the very British problem comes when you can finagle your way into the space. Okay, did it, pat yourself on the back, gold star. But then you can barely get out of your car without this awkward dance because you don't want to hit the car next to you with your door, but these parking spaces are not allowing for the fact that cars have doors. And so you're opening the door and like sideways shimmying your way through, and you have to like do an interpretive dance to get out of your car in this parking space. I find myself doing that a lot. The next problem on my list is when you see the delivery guy, maybe from the upstairs window, maybe downstairs, maybe you just hear him coming, but you can't be too eager and like meet him at the door. So you have to awkwardly just stand in your house, like waiting for the doorbell to ring, and then pretending, even though no one is watching you, pretending to like mosey your way through the door at an appropriate period of time so the delivery guy doesn't overthink about how fast you got to the door. Like, what? Why do I do this? Like, why don't I just meet the delivery guy at the door and be like, oh, saw you come in, like, let's save everybody time. I just freeze in my house, and like, why? The next problem is when you really want a starter or a dessert, but you're out with like a group of people and you have to wait to see if somebody else also wants it before you admit that you want it. If you're out with like a good friend or a significant other, fine. You feel free to be yourself and want all the desserts in the world. But when you're in a group, maybe like extended family, maybe like acquaintances or a larger group, and you just feel like somebody else needs to say that they also want a starter before you are allowed to want a starter, because God forbid you be the only person to like want a starter or want a dessert. It's all very awkward, very uncomfortable, and somebody has to be that guy, you know? Like, somebody has to be that person, but everybody's trying desperately not to be that person. And then sometimes people are too polite and they all want desserts or they all want starters or whatever. And if nobody's willing to be that guy, you all just go home sad that you didn't get dessert, even though you wanted it, because you felt like you were being polite by being like, oh no, I'm good, I'm full. Like, why don't we just say, like, why don't I just say, yes, this is what I want? Final British problem on my list is when a post office is located within like a co-op or a corner shop or something, and they combine the lines. So the same line to buy a thing of ketchup is the line that you need to be in for the post office facilities. Maybe it's one person running the whole thing, and you feel so awkward and so uncomfortable that you're taking any amount of time like with your post office stuff, because typically post office stuff is going to take a little bit longer than ringing somebody up like with their food items, and the line gets longer behind you and you're just like, I am so sorry for daring to send this card to my grandma. Like, I apologize. I will never do it again. And it's like, you're allowed to be there. They have post office facilities. It's not your fault that the lines are combined and that the person behind you with like a ready-made curry is having to wait, but you just feel like you have just wronged everybody in the store. So there you have it. An easy 9 very British problems list. Leave a comment below on which ones you identified with and let me know your own. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll see you next time.